13. Body shaming gets out of control. In a viral incident that unfolded in Ottawa in 2022, an Indigenous woman named Laura, who goes by @LauraG77 online, posted a video on Instagram and later shared it on Twitter, documenting a dispute between herself and another woman. The altercation began when Laura was criticized for not wearing a bra, and the situation quickly escalated. In the video, Laura accused the woman of body shaming her, leading to a physical assault. The footage momentarily cut out at one point, returning with Laura explaining why she was recording the incident. A bystander instructed her to stop filming, but the confrontation intensified as the woman knocked the phone out of Laura's hands. Misunderstanding the situation, onlookers mistakenly believed that Laura had stolen the woman's phone. However, it became apparent that Laura's phone was the one in question, and the alleged assailant confirmed this later in the video. Seeking refuge in her car, Laura was followed by the alleged assailant and others who got on the hood of her car, demanding the return of her phone. Police eventually intervened, and the 37-year-old suspect was served a notice to appear in court, facing charges of assault and mischief. The Ottawa Police Service Hate and Bias Crime Unit reviewed the case, but no hate-related charges were filed. On Twitter, users expressed support for Laura, condemning the bystanders who joined the altercation. Some even called for authorities to address systemic racism and take hate crimes seriously. In response to the overwhelming support, Laura expressed gratitude and shared insights into her experience as an Indigenous woman in Canada. Despite the negativity, she emphasized the importance of creating a safer world for future generations and called attention to issues such as hypersexualization, aggressive jealousy, and violence against Indigenous people. 12. Attacked with a frying pan. In a bizarre incident in Virginia in March of 2023, a homeowner shot a naked woman who allegedly broke into his home and attacked him with a frying pan. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office responded to a shooting on Loafers Rest Road in Austinville and found 35-year-old Paula Michelle Locklear with a gunshot wound to the leg. The homeowner, responding to a noise at the rear of his home, discovered an unclothed female entering through the rear door. Then, the intruder, who was later identified as Locklear, began assaulting the homeowner with a cast iron frying pan. Despite the assault, though, the victim managed to kick Locklear out of his home and secure the door. However, Locklear continued her disruptive behavior on the homeowner's back porch. She turned off the electrical breakers to the home and started banging on the kitchen window. Threatening the homeowner and demanding he leave, Locklear proceeded to beat on the victim's door. In response, the homeowner discharged a firearm, shooting Locklear in the leg. Authorities charged Locklear with felony breaking and entering while armed, assault and battery, and property damage. The 35-year-old suspect is currently held without bond, awaiting arraignment in the Carroll County General District Court. Carroll County Commonwealth Attorney Roger Brooks determined that the homeowner acted in self-defense, absolving him of any charges. The incident highlights the impulsive nature of the crime, as Locklear's actions escalated from breaking and entering to a violent attack with a frying pan, ultimately leading to her being shot in the leg by the homeowner. 11. Blaming the Good Samaritan. In a tragic incident in Merseyside, UK, a Good Samaritan, Wayne Kenny, found himself entangled in a nightmarish ordeal after attempting to aid 21-year-old Chloe Haynes, who was tragically crushed by a wardrobe at the Adelphi Hotel in Liverpool. The incident took place on September 10, 2022. Kenny, a fellow hotel guest, heard a commotion outside his door and rushed to help upon hearing someone say she's not breathing. Despite having plans to go out with his sons, Kenny entered Chloe's room to provide CPR, unaware that she'd already been dead for hours. After emergency services arrived, Kenny returned to his room, only to face a shocking turn of events. The police, considering his proximity to the victim, arrested him on suspicion of murder. During his 10 hours in custody, Kenny underwent a distressing experience. He described being interrogated, having his clothes removed, and being placed in a freezing cell. The custody attendant insinuated that he could face life imprisonment, and other inmates, overhearing Kenny's conversation with the officer, hurled abuse and threats at him from their respective cells. Despite being eventually released without charges, Kenny suffered professional consequences, losing his agency work. But despite the traumatic episode, he maintains that he doesn't regret attempting to assist Chloe. Chloe Haynes, who traveled from Fweley, Wales for a night out, tragically lost her life when, in a state of intoxication, she opened the wardrobe, mistaking it for the toilet or exit. The heavy furniture then collapsed on top of her. Merseyside Police, emphasizing the need for prompt evidence gathering in the initial stages of the investigation, later determined the death as accidental with no suspicious circumstances. Chloe's mother expressed horror at the arrest of Kenny and the other two men who tried to help her daughter, highlighting the complexities of responding to emergencies in the absence of clear information. 10. Spanish teacher killed by students. Jeremy Goodale, an 18-year-old Iowa teen, faced a life-altering sentence as he was handed a life term in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years for his role in the chilling 2021 beating death of his high school Spanish teacher, Nohema Greba. The brutal murder unfolded as Goodale, along with his 16-year-old friend Willard Miller, used a bat to fatally assault Greba, who was taking her routine walk in a Fairfield park. The motive behind this heinous act is traced back to a bad grade that Greba had given Miller. Fearing this academic setback would jeopardize his chances of participating in a study abroad program, Miller suggested the unthinkable, killing the teacher. In court, Goodale expressed remorse, addressing Greber's family, the community, and his own relatives. Tearfully, he acknowledged the irrevocable nature of his actions, expressing a deep wish to turn back time and prevent the pain he'd caused. His emotional plea, however, was met with a sudden and unexpected turn, as Goodale's nose began to bleed profusely, leading to a brief pause in the proceedings. Despite Goodale's law advocating for a life sentence with no mandatory minimum, the judge ruled in favor of a life term with a 25-year minimum. The prosecution emphasized the calculated nature of the crime, revealing that after the murder, the teenagers callously used a wheelbarrow to relocate Graber's lifeless body to an area near railroad tracks, attempting to conceal their gruesome act. Both Goodale and Miller were charged as adults, yet their age spared them from facing a mandatory life sentence without parole, a nuance in Iowa law that stirred controversy among the public. Miller received his life sentence earlier on, a life term with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Born in Mexico, Nohema Greba led a diverse life, working as a flight attendant and later earning a commercial airline pilot license. After moving to Fairfield in 1992, she became a teacher in 2012. Her tragic murder not only devastated her family, but also contributed to the decline in health and eventual death of her husband, Paul Graber, who succumbed to cancer after the loss of his wife. And what's perhaps the most devastating part of all this is that the couple left behind 3 grieving children. The sentencing hearing included impactful statements from Graber's family members, each highlighting the profound impact of the crime on their lives. Goodale, who was visibly affected by these testimonies, struggled to maintain his composure. Judge Sean Showers, while recognizing Goodale's remorse and cooperation, issued the sentence, expressing hope for healing in the community and wishing Goodale luck in his journey toward rehabilitation. 9. Woman ignores zoo barriers. In a bizarre incident at the Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska in 2015, a woman named Jacqueline Ide put herself in a dangerous position with an 18-year-old Malayan tiger named Mai. The incident occurred early in the morning before the zoo had opened to the public. Ide, who was apparently intoxicated, managed to access an unauthorized area, crossing a fence and security measures. But her impulse to pet the tiger resulted in a severe injury to her left hand. Ide was transported to Creighton University Medical Center by a friend, with potential risks of losing parts of her fingers due to the extent of the wounds. The Omaha Police Department reported that I'd exhibited aggressive behavior towards zoo staff, further indicating signs of intoxication. She was subsequently cited for criminal trespass, adding to her criminal record, which already included convictions for DUI, graffiti, disturbing the peace, obstruction of justice, and shoplifting. Notably, I'd had previously served prison time for her third DUI in 2011. Dennis Pate, the zoo's executive director and CEO, emphasized the zoo's commitment to the safety of both guests and animals. And while the incident involving Mai was under investigation, the zoo decided not to release surveillance footage of the event. Also, contrary to expectations, the tiger wasn't quarantined or put down. In response to the incident, the zoo took measures to enhance security, including the addition of more security cameras, improved path lighting, and computer-controlled locks to monitor entry and exit points. Pate assured the public that security remained a top priority for both visitors and the zoo's animal residents. The episode reminds us of the importance of adhering to safety protocols and the potential consequences of impulsive actions, especially when dealing with wild animals. 8. Crime in exchange for healthcare. In a quirky turn of events in Gastonia, North Carolina back in 2011, 59-year-old Richard James Verone ended up behind bars for an unconventional reason, robbing an RBC bank for a mere $1. But what could have possibly been his motive? To secure healthcare in prison. Verone handed a note to a female teller, claiming that he had a gun and demanding the symbolic dollar. With a growth in his chest, 2 ruptured discs, and no job, Verone believed that orchestrating his arrest and subsequent imprisonment for a 3-year stint would ensure the medical care he desperately needed. After handing over the note, Verone calmly took a seat, informing the teller that he would be waiting for the police. And he did exactly that, sitting on the sofa as officers arrived to arrest him. Despite the claim of possessing a gun, Verone was found to be unarmed. In interviews from Gaston County Jail, Verone explained his logic, stating that if manipulating the situation was necessary to access medical care, then so be it. He emphasized the desperation stemming from his health issues and lack of employment. Charged with larceny rather than armed robbery, Verone faced a potential 12-month sentence, with a $2,000 bond keeping him in Gaston County Jail. His court appearance was scheduled for June 28, 2011, shedding light on the unusual circumstances surrounding a crime committed on impulse, driven by the pressing need for healthcare. 7. Impulsive killing. In a seemingly motiveless crime that occurred in late 2018 in Vancouver, British Columbia, 51-year-old William Schneider was sentenced to 14 years in prison for the murder of 30-year-old Japanese exchange student Natsumi Kogawa. The crime involved Schneider killing Kogawa and stuffing her body into a suitcase, which was later discovered on the grounds of the Gabriola mansion. The judge described the murder as random and impulsive, highlighting the strangeness of the case given the absence of any apparent motive. Schneider's actions were characterized as a high level of future danger, especially considering his lengthy criminal history. The judge also condemned Schneider's disrespectful and defiling treatment of Kogawa's body, emphasizing that he treated her like garbage and left her to decompose in a suitcase. Kogawa's cause of death couldn't be determined by forensic pathologists, but prosecutors theorized that Schneider had asphyxiated her. The two were acquaintances, having met up on the day of the murder with plans to visit Stanley Park. Schneider's actions that day led to Kogawa's death, and he later disposed of her belongings, clothes, and his tent, which he told police he planned to have intercourse with Kogawa in. During the sentencing, Schneider addressed a short statement to Kogawa's mother, expressing his understanding of her pain, but stopping short of apologizing for the murder. Schneider was eventually found guilty of second-degree murder, and he pleaded guilty to interfering with human remains. The defense argued for the minimum sentence, life in prison with no parole for 10 years, pointing to Schneider revealing the location of Kogawa's body sooner or later. However, the Crown prosecutor pushed for a 17-year sentence, emphasizing Schneider's history of sadistic violence and the ongoing risk he posed to the public. As part of the sentence, Schneider was required to submit a DNA sample. He was prohibited from owning firearms, and he was instructed to pay $200 victim surcharges for each offense. The case remains a perplexing example of a seemingly senseless crime committed on impulse, leaving a community in shock and questioning the motive behind such a tragic act. 6. Road rage shooting. In Hurst, Texas, in July of 2023, a 37-year-old woman named Paula Nunez Linares was shot and killed in an apparent road rage shooting along East Loop 820. The incident unfolded on a Monday night when the victim and her husband Zane Jones were driving to work. The road rage altercation began when Jones passed a slow driver in the left lane. An aggressive driver behind them, seemingly upset, then accelerated and closely followed. In response, Jones gestured at the driver, thinking it was a mere exchange of gestures. However, to their shock, the driver fired a shot through their back left window, hitting Nunez in the head. Jones, in a state of panic, guided the minivan off the highway and sought help at a nearby gas station. The first responders rushed Nunez to the hospital, but despite efforts to save her, she was declared brain dead and later passed away. In a heartbreaking account, Jones expressed the devastating moment when he realized the severity of the situation. He recalled the difficulty of informing his wife that he believed North Texas would be safer for her than her native Guatemala, where she had experienced multiple armed robberies. Nunez's mother, Ana Linares, arrived from Guatemala, sharing the tragic irony that they thought America would be a safer place for her daughter. The couple had met in a Facebook fan group, and Nunez had recently achieved significant milestones, like obtaining a driver's license and a green card. Jones emphasized the unpredictable and impulsive nature of road rage incidents, urging individuals with such temperament not to carry firearms. The shooter's vehicle, described as a small, dark-colored older model car, remains unidentified and no arrests have been announced. A GoFundMe page has been established to assist with Nunez's funeral expenses and support her family's travel from and to Guatemala. The community is left mourning the loss of a vibrant woman whose life was abruptly taken in a senseless act of violence on the road. 5. Donovan LaBella. Donovan LaBella, the 26-year-old protester shot by a U.S. Marshal during July 2020 protests in Portland, was released from inpatient rehab on the weekend of July 25th of that year. LaBella suffered a depressed skull fracture, resulting in impaired impulse control and cognitive function loss. His mother, Desiree, shared that he quickly becomes upset and frustrated, without the ability to control his impulses. The incident occurred during downtown protests near the federal courthouse. In a widely circulated video, LaBella is seen pushing a canister of tear gas away before being struck by an impact munition from an officer. The episode sparked widespread condemnation, prompting investigations by the Department of Justice Office of the Inspector General and potential criminal charges against the deputy involved. Desiree LaBella declined calls from politicians, emphasizing the non-partisan nature of the issue. She strongly criticizes the excessive use of force against an unarmed person and questions the necessity of such actions, particularly given the officer's training. LaBella's injury has become a symbol for Portland protesters, with calls for justice appearing in graffiti and artwork. However, Desiree revealed that the family has faced hate-filled messages on social media, accusing Donovan of being affiliated with Antifa. Despite his quicker-than-expected recovery, though, Desiree remains uncertain about the ultimate prognosis, explaining that there's still some damage and the extent is unknown. Desiree, residing in Oklahoma, cannot travel to Portland, leaving Donovan's care in the hands of his two older sisters. To protect him from potential threats, the family plans to keep him away from Portland in the future. The incident touches on the challenges faced by families in the aftermath of such traumatic events, navigating both physical recovery and the societal reactions that accompany them. Many were quick to point the finger at the officer responsible for the shooting, claiming that he acted without thinking and used excessive force. The U.S. Marshal's decision to impulsively fire at unarmed protesters sent the community on fire, with some stating that he should be sued or charged. But in February 2023, the US Supreme Court tossed out a case against the unnamed federal marshal, suggesting that he faced no repercussions for the incident. 4. Anything for love. Ohio teenager Caitlin Coons is facing charges of aggravated murder, tampering with evidence, and the abuse of a corpse after allegedly killing her boyfriend's mother, 53-year-old Nicole Jones, in May of 2023. The incident occurred after Coons moved in with Jonathan Jones, her 33-year-old boyfriend, who'd previously been convicted due to his relationship with her when she was just 15. Coons reportedly demanded that Jonathan kill his mother, accusing her of disapproving of their relationship. But when Jonathan failed to comply, Coons took matters into her own hands. Armed with a rock, she attacked Nicole Jones in the kitchen of her home, bludgeoning and strangling her to death. And to make things even worse, Jonathan allegedly witnessed the murder from the living room, doing nothing to stop the onslaught of violence against his defenseless mother. Following the killing, the duo disposed of Nicole's body by placing it in a dumpster at an apartment complex, which was later transported to a landfill. Subsequently, Coons and Jonathan fled to Mexico, where Coons confessed to the murder during the trip. While on the road, she informed a caseworker about the crime. Law enforcement, acting on the information, discovered that Nicole's home matched Coons' description of the crime. The U.S. Marshal Service Missing Child Unit apprehended Jonathan in Mexico on May 8th. His failure to disable a GPS tracking device, imposed after his earlier conviction in March, aided authorities in locating him, and thankfully, Coons was also with him. In March 2023, Jonathan had pleaded guilty to endangering children and attempting to commit pandering obscenity involving a minor. He faced accusations of engaging in sexual activities with a minor when she was 15 or 16, taking explicit photographs and intending to distribute them online. Jonathan is now facing charges related to his mother's murder, and both individuals are in custody. Coons will be tried as an adult, and the case has been referred to the grand jury for further proceedings. The motive for the impulsive crime appears rooted in Coons' belief that Nicole Jones was hindering her relationship with Jonathan. 3. Boredom blamed for impulsive killing. In the quiet town of Duncan, Oklahoma, the tranquility of a day in 2013 was shattered by a brutal act of violence that left the community in shock. Christopher Lane, a 22-year-old Australian college athlete, became the unsuspecting victim of a crime that seemed to defy all logic and reason. What emerged from the subsequent investigation was a chilling revelation. The motive behind this senseless act of murder was nothing other than sheer boredom. As the details unfolded, the perpetrators, 3 teenagers named James Francis Edwards, Chauncey Allen Luna, and Michael Dwayne Jones, shockingly confessed that they were at a loss for things to do. And in a disturbing turn of events, they callously decided to kill someone merely to stave off their boredom. Duncan Police Chief Danny Ford, recounting the suspect's statements, described the incident as a gang killing by thrill killers, a term that sends shivers down the spine due to its implication of murder for the sheer excitement it brings. However, experts caution against taking the suspect's statements at face value. Dave Cullen, a prominent researcher on teen violence, noted that the unusual nature of 3 individuals engaging in such heinous acts together might suggest differing motivations among them. The psychology behind thrill killings is a complex and disturbing aspect of criminal behavior that goes beyond a simple desire for excitement. This case is not an isolated incident in the grim landscape of thrill killings. Several instances in recent years have seen individuals attributing their violent actions to boredom. In 2010, a group of teenagers fatally stabbed a pizza chef in Connecticut, claiming boredom as their reason. Jeremy Ganchel confessed in 2008 to suffocating a college student in Manhattan, once again citing boredom as his motive. Similarly, in the UK in 2006, Stuart Harling fatally stabbed a nurse during a bout of restlessness. While the Oklahoma case stands out due to its seemingly random and motiveless nature, experts emphasize that the concept of boredom as a motive for murder may be oversimplifying a more complex issue. Boredom might be masking deeper problems, such as a lack of empathy or a twisted enjoyment derived from causing harm. This disturbing trend prompts a broader societal reflection on factors contributing to the emergence of thrill killings among disaffected and idle youth, raising questions about the impact of societal boredom on the vulnerable minds of adolescents. In the end, James Francis Edwards pleaded guilty to being an accessory to murder, receiving a 25-year prison sentence with 10 years suspended. Chauncey Allen Luna was responsible for actually killing Christopher Lane, and as a result he was sentenced to life behind bars without the possibility of parole. Michael Dwayne Jones pleaded guilty to second-degree murder for his own involvement in the drive-by shooting, earning himself a life in prison. Another accessory to the fatal shooting, 23-year-old Odesse John David Barnes, admitted to concealing the murder weapon when he was given the firearm by Luna after the killing had taken place. He was found guilty of accessory to first-degree murder after the fact, and after taking the plea deal, he was ordered to serve 12 years in prison, followed by another 13 years of probation. 2. University of Texas Tower Shooting. On August 1st, 1966, a heinous act of mass murder occurred at the University of Texas at Austin, forever etching the name Charles Whitman into the annals of infamy. The perpetrator, a 25-year-old Marine veteran, embarked on a ruthless shooting spree, indiscriminately targeting unsuspecting victims, both within the university's main building tower and from its observation deck. Prior to the carnage at the university, Whitman had already committed unspeakable acts. He'd stabbed his mother and wife to death, rationalizing it as sparing them from the perceived embarrassment his actions would bring. An autopsy revealed a tumor in Whitman's brain, an anomaly some experts believe might have contributed to the violent impulses that plagued him for years. The University of Texas Tower shooting claimed 15 lives, including that of an unborn child, and left 31 others injured. Whitman's rampage lasted a chilling 96 minutes before 2 Austin Police Department officers ended his life. At the time, this event stood as the deadliest mass shooting by a lone gunman in US history, only to be surpassed years later by other tragic incidents. To understand the origins of this brutality, one delves into Whitman's troubled upbringing. Raised in a household marred by domestic violence, Whitman's father, though a provider, demanded perfection from his family, perpetuating an atmosphere of fear and subservience. Despite being an intelligent and accomplished young man, Whitman faced his share of challenges, including a court-martial during his military service. The descent into darkness accelerated after his parents' divorce, with Whitman seeking psychiatric help for mounting pressures and frustrations. In a chilling revelation to a campus psychiatrist, he disclosed his fantasies of shooting people from the university tower. On the fateful day, armed with an arsenal of weapons, Whitman strategically positioned himself on the tower's observation deck. With meticulous planning, he began firing upon unsuspecting victims below, targeting anyone in his line of sight. The initial chaos led some bystanders to mistake the gunfire for construction noise or symbolic protests against the Vietnam War. Police and civilians rallied against the sniper, providing suppressive fire from the ground. Aided by a civilian and a retired Air Force tail gunner, police officers eventually confronted Whitman on the observation deck. The final confrontation resulted in Whitman's death, marking the end of a horrifying episode in American history. The University of Texas Tower shooting remains a grim reminder of the devastation that can unfold when unchecked violence meets the vulnerability of an unsuspecting public. Whitman's life, filled with personal turmoil and violent impulses, culminated in a day of infamy that shook the nation to its very core. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. Impulse control issues. In the vivid tapestry of Miami's nightlife, Club Lex, also known as Rolex, emerged as a concrete fortress on the bustling Gratini Parkway. It was the backdrop for a tragic incident in 2012 that not only left one individual dead and another paralyzed, but also unveiled the unsettling realities of the armed security industry. The night began routinely for Lukaci Kendall, the security guard on duty at Club Lex. Armed with a Glock 19 and a 17-round magazine, Kendall, also known as Juice, prepared for his shift in the crowded parking lot. The atmosphere was charged with the scent of marijuana and the allure of sweet smoking barbecue, attracting patrons from the neighborhood and the club alike. But amidst the neon-lit ambiance and gyrating dancers, the evening took a harrowing turn when Kendall perceived a threat from two men inside a parked Ford pickup truck. As a former bodybuilder, Kendall recounted feeling menaced by their gestures, and he claimed to have heard ominous threats from their direction. However, Michael Smathers and Kijuan Bird, the patrons in question, insisted that they never uttered a word to Kendall. In a moment of impulsive escalation, Kendall, without warning, drew his Glock and unleashed a barrage of gunfire, at least a dozen rounds into the parked pickup. Chaos ensued as patrons scattered, mistaking the shots for fireworks. The bullets found their mark, striking Smathers 4 times, and Bird, desperately seeking cover, fell beneath the pickup. Bird was killed, and Smathers was left paralyzed from the waist down. Beyond the tragic outcome, the incident at Club Lex revealed systemic issues within the armed security industry. The profession often attracts individuals working for meager pay, lacking proper oversight and mental health evaluations. Unlike law enforcement officers, many security guards operate without the scrutiny and safeguards necessary for roles requiring split-second decision-making. The aftermath raised questions about Kendall's mental state and the inadequacies of a system that failed to prevent such an impulsive and violent response. Club Lex, which was once a haven for nightlife, became a stark symbol of the consequences when those entrusted with public safety operate without the necessary checks and balances.
Number 10. Joey David George. Just 2 months after a shooter walked into a Tops supermarket in Buffalo, New York, and opened fire on innocent victims in a hate-fueled racist attack recently, someone else began calling a Tops store in western New York and threatening to kill African-American shoppers. The caller repeatedly called one store and asked how many black shoppers were there. He said he might already be in the store and that he planned to murder all the people of color he came across, including women, children, and babies. The threats didn't stop there. The deranged harasser told the employees who answered the phone that if he couldn't find enough victims at that store, he would go to a different store in the city of Buffalo and kill people there. He warned that he was a really good shot who was capable of picking people off in the parking lot, said that he was armed with assault rifles, and rambled about his convoluted political beliefs, saying things like, "This is what happens in a blue state," and talking about a supposed race war. Federal law enforcement officials were able to trace the calls to a 37-year-old Washington state resident named Joey David George, who was also accused of phoning a California restaurant and threatening to shoot all the minorities there if the business didn't close within 20 minutes. Over the last year, George also allegedly harassed businesses in Maryland, Connecticut, and Washington. He faces 2 counts of making interstate threats. Hopefully, the court will make an example out of him by convicting him and giving him the maximum possible sentence to show that this type of behavior will not be tolerated. Number 9. Erica Cole. 31-year-old Erica Cole and her husband, Nicholas, were driving on a highway in Dodge City, Alabama one day in 2019 when they got into an argument with another driver on the side of the road. When she failed to pull her husband away from a heated confrontation with the motorist, Erica pulled a gun and fired at the other party, but accidentally shot Nicholas in the head. Cullman County Sheriff's deputies responded to the scene and arrested Erica for her nearly fatal outburst. In the meantime, Nicholas was taken to the hospital, where he was soon reported to be in a stable condition. The man that Erica meant to shoot walked away with minor injuries. A resident who lives nearby told local station WVTM-13 that they heard a loud blast and thought it was fireworks at first. When they looked outside and saw Nicholas on the ground, they realized that something much less innocent was going on. Even though police believed that Erica was trying to break the two up rather than escalate the situation, they concluded that she most likely fired the gun on purpose. She was charged with attempted murder, second-degree assault, and reckless endangerment. The outcome of the case is unclear. Number 8. Emma and Valerie Daly. In 2020, Natalie Bell was talking with a friend early one morning in Manchester, England, when a group of women ambushed her from behind and brutally assaulted her, punching and kicking her while she lay helplessly on the ground. When she tried crawling away, her attackers restrained her and continued beating her while hurling racial and ethnic insults at her. Police charged 25-year-old Emma Daly, her 21-year-old sister Valerie, and Valerie's 20-year-old girlfriend Chelsea Leary with assault. They pleaded guilty, and the Daly sisters received a 14-month prison sentence, while Leary received a suspended 12-month sentence. Emma was 6.5 months pregnant with her third child when a punishment was handed down, which meant that she would give birth behind bars. Her lawyer argued for leniency, claiming that his client showed genuine remorse for her actions and that she suffers from mental health issues that affected her behavior. He also blamed the attack on alcohol, saying that Emma was drunk and that it altered her thinking at the time, and claimed that the young woman waged the attack after hearing that the victim had bullied a relative, but that she later realized it was untrue. By the time Emma's sentencing rolled around, she had already lost custody of her 2 kids due to alcohol abuse. Her attorney said that she planned to do everything in her power to make sure she didn't lose her third baby, and that she was on the straight and narrow in hopes of getting her life back on track. Number 7. Autumn King. 20-year-old Autumn King and her boyfriend, 26-year-old Eric Charles Allen, thought it would be impressive to take some Snapchat pictures of themselves holding a gun in late 2018. The wannabe Bonnie and Clyde staged a photo shoot in their Rampart, Texas home the day before Christmas Eve, when things took a horrifying, deadly turn. According to Autumn's version of events, Allen was behind the camera when she accidentally pulled the trigger. The gun fired, and her boyfriend collapsed, and at first she thought he was just playing around, only to realize that he had been shot while their 2 children were in the home. He was bleeding from his mouth and nose, and she tried dragging him out to her car to drive him to the hospital, so she dialed 911 instead. Eric ended up dying from his injuries, sparking a police investigation. Detectives recovered a phone from the scene containing a video of the couple arguing about 15 minutes before the 911 call was placed. They were accusing each other of cheating and justifying their alleged infidelity. Autumn was charged with manslaughter, but it's unclear how the case played out. Number 6. Jacob Gilstrap and Ann Harrison. 43-year-old Jacob Gilstrap and 39-year-old Ann Harrison were entrusted with the care of a 70-year-old man in Oak Grove, Kentucky, earlier this year. Instead of taking care of the man, they forced him to live alone in a trailer for 5 months, while subjecting him to horrific abuse and neglect. In addition to depriving him of basic care, the couple were in charge of the man's finances, and records revealed that they routinely overdrew on his bank account every month until his social security check was deposited. Bank employees also confirmed that there was a monthly payment withdrawn from his account for a life insurance policy. The victim's suffering only recently came to light when Gilstrap and Harrison brought him to a hospital in an unresponsive state. He was severely malnourished and hadn't eaten in several days, according to medical staff, and also suffering from sepsis, gangrene, several pressure ulcers, and an open wound down to the bone of his leg. Doctors had no choice but to amputate both legs, and the man was still in septic shock days after he arrived at the emergency room. Gilstrap and Harrison face felony charges of criminal abuse, abuse of an adult, and exploitation of an adult. Number 5. Deborah Ralph. Deborah Ralph was a trusted caregiver at a home for adults with severe brain injuries in the English town of Tottington until her colleagues saw her acting shockingly abusive one day in 2021. They witnessed a 54-year-old driving a car backwards and forwards with one of the home's residents on her knees in the vehicle. She then drew whiskers on the woman's cheeks, colored the tip of her nose black, and offered her dog biscuits. Ralph's co-workers immediately told her that her behavior constituted abuse. They reported the disturbing incident to authorities, and she was soon charged for the crime. The vulnerable victim reportedly has a mental age of 4 years old, making Ralph's actions all the more disturbing. Her defense lawyer, Rachel Shenton, argued that she didn't mean any harm and that she admittedly behaved recklessly but was supposedly just trying to entertain the resident. Shenton further claimed that Ralph thought of drawing on the woman's face as similar to putting paint on a child, and that the victim wasn't distressed at any point. The attorney said that Ralph was genuinely sorry for what she did, and that she suffers from significant mental health problems. But the judge saw it as no excuse for the way Ralph treated someone who needs 24/7 care and is essentially one of the most vulnerable people the caretaker could have targeted. She lost her job and received a 12-week suspended prison sentence for her abhorrent behavior. Number 4. Angelica Garcia Galegos. A dispute between Waco, Texas neighbors Angelica Garcia Galegos and April Hoffman became so heated in 2020 that both women invested in surveillance cameras that were pointed at each other's backyards, and Galegos put up a privacy fence even though her family couldn't really afford it. When tensions eventually reached a boiling point, Galegos shot Hoffman in the neck and was charged with aggravated assault. At the time of the shooting, Hoffman was allegedly standing over the privacy fence in a threatening manner with an impact wrench in her hand. Galegos' defense attorney, Walter Reeves Jr., claimed that Hoffman was essentially a neighbor from hell who mowed her lawn during the early morning hours, yelled and cursed at the family, and threatened Galegos' husband with a hammer. Reeves also accused Hoffman of hanging upside-down crosses and voodoo dolls along the privacy fence. On the other hand, the prosecutor argued that while Hoffman was certainly an unpleasant neighbor and a strange woman, the facts of the case are pretty cut and dry. They said that Galegos was not justified in shooting her neighbor, which was captured by both residents' surveillance cameras. In the words of Assistant District Attorney Will Hicks, this woman brought the gun to the fight, and now she wants to say it was the other person's fault. Hoffman denied practicing voodoo and said that the altercation that led up to the shooting stemmed from her trying to hang a piece of sheet metal on her fence to shade her squash plants. She claimed that Galegos and another woman came outside and threatened her, and that she pleaded with Galegos not to shoot her as soon as she saw the gun. The trial is ongoing. Number 3. Shane Goel. Teenage grocery store clerks in Stewartstown, New Hampshire were left feeling alarmed recently after 36-year-old Vermont resident Shane Goel allegedly went into the business and subjected them to a bizarre, hate-filled rant about his dissatisfaction with a local school. Disturbing surveillance footage shows the man saying that, "Before you know it, there's going to be a drag queen show," adding that if that were to happen, he'd probably show up and kill somebody, a lot of bodies. When police confronted Goel about the incident, he allegedly said, "Don't take what I said as a threat, take it as a promise." The alarming incident came just weeks after he was banned from school grounds at Canaan High School in Vermont for harassing people for wearing COVID masks. Authorities took Goel's alleged behavior so seriously that local schools closed for 2 days in response to his threats. He faces a misdemeanor harassment charge and is due to face the accusations against him in court any day now. Number 2. Eddie Anderson. When a Tatnall County, Georgia resident noticed his neighbor, local chief magistrate Eddie Anderson, picking from his vegetable garden, he called the 70-year-old on the phone and confronted him. Anderson allegedly responded by threatening to assault the resident, who then went to the local sheriff and reported the alarming behavior. The case landed in the hands of detectives with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, who soon determined that witnesses overheard Anderson making the threats. They also uncovered surveillance footage from a neighbor's camera that allegedly shows the judge in the act of stealing the vegetables. This wasn't Anderson's first display of aggression, according to the Associated Press. In 2019, he was reprimanded for non-criminal conduct after he reportedly called a local car dealer and demanded that they return a woman's car that had been repossessed. Records show that the dealer refused, and the woman was advised to file a lawsuit in court. The state's Judicial Qualifications Commission has the authority to suspend Anderson while his case plays out in court, but he remains on the bench for now. Number 1. Terrorizing Trio. When a homeowner in Escambia County, Florida, answered his door recently, he was met by 3 men. 2 of them pushed him back into the house, while a 3rd man pulled out a gun, but remained outside. The resident had a pistol, but he dropped it onto the ground, and one of the intruders picked it up. He managed to run into the back of his house, where he had another gun, and began shooting at the trespassers, causing them to flee to their getaway vehicle, where the 4th suspect was waiting in the driver's seat. The burglars sped off, hitting a neighbor's mailbox in the process. Police soon caught up with 20-year-old DeTorrance Heckworth and charged him with robbery, home invasion with a firearm, and numerous other crimes. They also apprehended 18-year-old Antonio Dwayne Dean Jr. on suspicion of a similar laundry list of charges. A 3rd suspect was wanted at the last update, and the 4th suspect was yet to be identified. In a Facebook video about the incident, Sheriff Chip Simmons said that the homeowner would absolutely not be charged for firing his gun, noting that in Florida, people are allowed to defend themselves against home invaders.
You rather find out that your boyfriend/girlfriend had cheated on you on a whim while they were drunk, or that they'd cheated on you several times on purpose while they were sober? Which scenario would be worse? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!